Today is officially the launch of the new version of the FIFA Club World Cup. And today we're going to run through it all. We're going to look at the teams, some of the face-offs that we believe we will see. We'll debate, will this competition actually be a success? It's always difficult to know that with new competitions. And of course, at the end, we're going to be giving our winner predictions and our dark horse predictions for this tournament. Let's get straight into it. Jamie, will come to you first. Obviously, Man City are in it, as we know. Right off the bat, before a ball's been kicked, do you think this competition could be successful?
Just we're not just in it, Jordan. We are the defending champions. I'll have you know. Even though it's a new format, we're technically the defending champions.
That's
Can it
shocking.
will it be successful? In one word, yes. And I think they've been clever in what the way that they've dealt with it. Now, for the sort of first tournament, first few tournaments, they're going to work out what's going to go well, what's not going to go well. So actually, for teams to take it seriously, they had to throw big money at it, and that's the sad reality of it. Because otherwise, if they didn't, it would be considered a pre-season friendly, quite a competitive one. But that's the way it is, and the money in it means that City have taken a very strong squad. I've seen Chelsea have taken a strong squad. I've not looked at every single squad, but most of them are fully strengthened, and that is because there's a lot of money on the line. Now, if we're talking sort of say 20 years down the line, where it's the fifth, sixth tournament, I think people will be taking this very seriously because one, there will still be money on the line, but because it's every 4 years, it is sort of like a specialty. It's a club. It's sorry, a World Cup. That's every 4 years. The Euros, the same. It it makes it more sort of prestigious, and the way that you've got to get into this tournament for especially the European clubs is winning the Champions League to secure a place or being top of the coefficients. So I think because of the way you have to get into the tournament, it will make it a success. But
Yeah.
early stages, if you're not a City Chelsea fan in England, you probably don't care that much. And I think that is something we have as probably the English. We don't fully care. If you look at what the Nations League is, I'm not that big a fan of it. It's a new tournament, but I'm not a big fan of international football. I will watch the Euros, I'll watch the World Cup. I couldn't care less about the qualifiers. So it's sort of it's trying to fit into a place where people are interested, like they are for the Champions League, even if their team's not in it. But I think that's the
Yeah.
difficulty they've got to come over it. But like I say, I think in 20 years' time, it will be maybe not as important as the Champions League, but certainly up there.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, you hit the nail on the head with the money, right? The bottom line is we can debate preseason friendlies, we can debate too many games in season. A good example was Man United, right? We all moan about the fixtures. They as soon as they finish the season, bosh, straight out to Asia playing games still. So as much as clubs want to moan about the fixture pile up, at the end of the day, if you chuck enough money at it, the owners are interested. That means the managers and players are going to be interested because there'll be bonuses and what have you. And also, if you're a player, as you said, it's a 4 year, one every 4 year tournament. Like that is prestigious in itself. That is as big as you said. That is as rare as a World Cup. So as a player, why would you not want to win that? And we see it, Reece, we see it in wrestling all the time, right? When they bring a new title, you want to be that. There's such a fight to be that first ever. And I know, appreciate Jamie. We've won it before. City have won it before. The Club World Cup. This is different. Like I don't think you can say you're the defending champions because it's a completely different tournament. But
I'm going with it. I'm sticking
you
by
can
it.
claim
I'm
it,
I'm
but yeah,
claiming it.
it's not the same, right? So this for me, I am excited about it, but I think again, you look at the prize money and you go, the winner of this tournament can get $125 million. I know Liverpool aren't in it; they've just spent 125 basically million on words. If they win the tournament, they've literally just paid for like the biggest transfer record signed in history. City have gone and splashed a load of cash straight off the bat. Those players are then free if you win this tournament effectively. Like it's mental. So for every single club in it, we should absolutely want to win it. But I get your point, and Reece, it'll be interesting to hear your perspective because I'm not rubbing it in, but obviously Arsenal are not in the tournament. How do you feel at this moment as a neutral about this tournament?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a new platform for teams to get some exposure. I know that Europe is probably the continent that carries the most weight. That's understandable because they're earning probably the most money. I think they're earning 9.9 million, the teams from Europe, just for participating. Um, so that goes to show the weight there of of them. But it's a good opportunity for clubs to get exposure. If you look at some of these teams here, we know that there's teams from the Saudi Pro League, but we've got teams from Tunisia, um, Experience de Tunis, I believe they're called. You've got Wydad or Wydad from Morocco. You've also got, Uriah Red Diamonds, Ulsan and Auckland, etc. from Asia. And then we've got obviously the classic teams like River Plate and Boca Juniors, which even though we know who they are, they're a global name, this is money they probably don't normally have access to because you get 1.5 million for a win, 800K for a draw. That's a lot of money, and in England we might have PSR, we might have FFP. I know Europe has a FFP, but think about what these teams can do, even if they hold out for a draw. Every team has a chance of winning money by the way the groups are. So it's staggering amounts, even for a team like Juventus, who are a bit rough on the old finances at the moment, reportedly. It's money they need. So,
Yeah, imagine they go and win it,
well, they'll
and then
go all
a
out for
hundred
it.
million, 100 million cash injection. Like it is potentially not life changing. It's probably the wrong term, but it is so big for any of these for any club, let alone like maybe a Dortmund who are a bit more financially strict or Juventus. It's crazy.
Well, that's it. And the fact that the winner earns 30 million pound alone, well, I think the Champions League winner is about 21.5 million. This is staggering difference. And it only means that teams are going to want it to be pushed more. It only means teams are going to want to participate more, do their coefficients more, put more care. There could be overall more investment. You think about this, if this competition grows, which I think it will, I think it will start off on the low side attendance wise, etc. Because teams are going to go for it, you're going to get some excitement. And I think you'll see more investment because other potential owners will go or investors will go, well, we could qualify for this. We know it's worth doing. We'll get money for it. We'll invest in this team, in this league, etc. That should hopefully have the snowball effect I'd like it to see. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the actual games go. I don't expect them to be glorified friendlies. I think there's going to be something to them, and to get potential games of say Boca Juniors, River Plate, etc. are things that you're going to want to watch.
Yeah, and the bottom line is we've said this for so long, and everyone kind of questions. It's weird that it's only Europe that we play, like with for the Champions League. It's we don't ever really, and the only times I've seen it with Chelsea is either friendlies or the Club World Cup. Is seeing your team against some of these weird teams from not weird teams, that's probably harsh, but just these teams we've not heard of, we've not watched, we've not seen before. And there probably is a few gems in there, like who's actually watched a game of Fluminense, right? Like Brazil, Flamengo. Like we don't have the opportunity really to ever watch these teams in action. So to see Premier League clubs and what have you against them, I do think it's quite exciting. But as you said, it's trying to get the neutrals to buy into that. Is a neutral going to stay up at 1 a.m. and watch, whatever they're called, Alien against, Porto, whatever. That's not going to happen yet. But at the end of the day, once you get into the round of 16 or the quarter semis, if you put two big teams together with a lot on the line, people are going to tune in and watch it. Like we saw the Nations League, Jamie. I know you mentioned that earlier with Spain v France, one of the greatest games of all time in internationals. Like that doesn't happen in a friendly. And yeah, if you build the right stakes and the right teams, the audience will come with it.
Well, the problem is how they've structured it. So, like I said, with the sort of start of it, they've got to work out what works and what doesn't work. And at the moment, their ticket price is certainly something that doesn't work. they've had to slash ticket prices massively. I think it was $300 they initially put it out for any ticket, and this is in the group stages. So that's why you've got the first game, which is what is it? Our why? Yeah, I can't pronounce
Al
it.
Ali.
Al
Al
Ali,
Ali.
Al Ali, yep, versus Inter Miami. They're playing at the Hard Rock Stadium, which holds 65,000 people, and they hadn't even sold 25K a couple of days ago. And that's because they put the ticket prices way too high. They can get away with it sometimes in America, but them prices will be for the top games. They're not for just any random game. Because I've gone and watched the sort of basketball out there. Certainly didn't pay that price. I didn't have premium seats, but I still didn't pay that price. And that's what they're sort of trying to offer. So they've slashed them massively, and that's the first mistake I think they've made with it all, because you've got to remember club teams have got to travel to America for it. There is 3 American teams in there, so they have to do the least amount of travelling, but still, it's still a massive cost to get over to America for it, and that could be for just one game. So you're thinking flights, you could probably fly to America for £400 or £500 if you get a really cheap sort of flight. You get quite lucky. Then you got the 300 on top. You're talking £700 for a game. That's ridiculous. It's You can get the locals to come in, but you got to remember America doesn't care about football that much. They care about their American football so much more. So that's where I think you've got to work it out, because when, like you say with Jordan, when it's the big games, that's easier to sell. But when you've got, I know they probably thought, oh, into Miami, you got Messi there, that will sell. But if they continue in that way, it will not be successful, because there'll be no fans there, there'll be no atmosphere. Don't get me wrong, some people will pay it still, but you're not going to get enough to sort of create what's good about football. Like you say,
Yeah.
we hear about Boca Juniors, we hear about River Plate, and one thing we always hear about is how good their atmospheres are, especially like in their sort of home grounds and things. If you're pricing it so high that they can't get there, you're going to lose that, and that's where the competition will feel like a pre-season sort of game. No one will really care, and no one will tune in, and that's where it could be a flop. That's
Yeah.
that's that's where I think they do need to work on massively about making it accessible to fans. It doesn't have to be, the die-hard fans like all over, but you've got to try and make it enjoyable atmosphere completely. Kind of empty
Yeah.
stadiums.
Exactly that. You're going to end up with either too many tourists who are basically clapping for both teams, and there's no actual atmosphere, or it's going to look a bit embarrassing and be criticised in the media because a 60,000 stadium is like, half full, or not even half full by the sounds of it. And it's like the game, as we said, the big games are fine, but if you let me have a look at some of these fixtures. Botafogo versus Seattle Sounders. Is that going to sell out 60,000? Ulsan versus I can't even say their name. Mamelodi Sundowns. Is that going to? That's not going to be a sellout, right? Like, I don't think people would pay $20 to watch that. I might have just insulted two teams there, but
It'll take time to grow. Like if you think of say the World Cup, you might get two teams where it might not gauge the most interest viewership wise, but there's still a packed stadium, and people I think will go out of intrigue or interest. You'll still get a lot of people from you think of Ulsan in South Korea. A lot of people will still go from there. Um, the Mexican teams you'll expect a big following with the community they've got there in the States. So it's baby steps. The pricing, etc., will change, over time. I think they're doing it as a litmus test for the World Cup. So it's sort of it's just sort of biding your time with it. I expect PSG versus Atletico Madrid to get big attendance, for example.
Mm.
Um, and perhaps Bayern Munich versus Auckland, because I'd expect Bayern Munich to have that interest with them. But it will take time to grow, and I think we'll see it with the Nations League. We may have looked down on it at first, but then you start to see the competitiveness of the games. The winner does get something at the end other than just money in Nations League. So to see teams want to win it is quite good. It's nice to actually see it. And have you noticed that since England got relegated in it, they seem to be desperate to want to be back in the party. So it will grow, and I think teams will take more of an interest. It's money that teams need. It's definitely money that teams need because of obviously with wages and transfer fees as they are, there needs to be extra finances. If obviously there wasn't, they probably wouldn't need to go. So it's got potential, and with money riding on it, I think you'll be surprised to see how many teams will give it a go.
Do you both think that there could be an issue with certain games being sort of very one-sided? Because you just mentioned sort of Auckland, their Reese, they are an amateur team. Their players have second jobs and have had to take. I've heard some of them have to take unpaid leave in order to get over for this competition. They're in the group with Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich could absolutely annihilate them, and because this is, if that's the only result that's like that in the tournament, I don't think it's going to be a problem. But if there's more that could be, because Bayern Munich on their day could actually beat them over 10-0. Like they play a pre-season friendly, I can't remember who it's against now. They always play them, and their record is 27-0. In a big tournament, what they want for this to be a big tournament, you can't have them results. You can't have a 10-0. It could be a one-off completely. I understand there can be a one-off game that happens like that. But if you do get something that's sort of ridiculous score, I'm talking like a 15-0, that that harms the competition, especially in these early stages.
I sort of disagree with that because look, you expect this Auckland team to give 150% in this game. Bayern Munich might not put all the big guns out. Yeah, it could end up 9-0, but you see it in the Champions League, even when it was the group stages, you'd see certain teams lose 7-0, 6-0. No, yeah, of course, they're
But
more
I'm talking about
competitive.
scores double that. I'm a 7-0 sort of
Yeah,
that does happen from time to time. Don't get me
it
wrong, I agree on
does.
that. But I'm
And that's
saying
fine.
if you're
It
hitting
does,
if
but
you're hitting
I don't
15
10-0.
if you're hitting 15-0, I think it
maybe, but
looks
I
a bit
think
embarrassing.
yeah, but I think this will have a competitiveness to it. When it comes to competition, I think teams will you'll find that Bayern Munich they might go I'm just saying as an example, they could potentially still lose, but Bayern Munich might go 6-0 up and then that's it. They stop. They'll rest players, they'll rotate players. There's gamesmanship about it. I don't think they'd go to beat Auckland 58-0. I don't see them wanting to do that. I think there's a lot of respect between teams these days and game management to avoid injuries. So, yeah, it is possible, but you get it with every tournament anyway, and there's always going to be one team in the tournament who is a lot less quality, a lot less depth than others. So it happens. I just think for Auckland, the money they're going to make, Auckland City is going to be insane. So I think they're going to look at it like that. Even if they lose, all the exposure they're going to get from this and maybe a new sort of fan base from it is worth it.
Yeah, I mean that is it's pretty mental really when you look at the size of their club. But again, look, to some degree, maybe a 50-0 is not that entertaining, but it's good. I still think it's good to have these teams in it. But I do get your point. Everyone will be like, "Oh, what is this? Like, why have you put these two teams together?"
Exactly, that's it. It's not that I don't think Auckland shouldn't be in this tournament because the way that whatever the qualifying process is for them, they deserve to be in this tournament. But I'm just saying because we're talking about successfulness of the tournament, if you get this sort of because at the moment there's skepticism about it because it's the first tournament. But I was saying if you get let's say that's not the only result. Let's say there's a few of them around the group stages. You get maybe four of them. I think that's a significant number and a worrying number to have
Yeah,
such a big gap between certain teams because you you don't want to see that really. You want to see competitive games, and that's my point. Because if you don't see competitive games, people are going to think less of it, and that could be something that holds it back.
Yeah, but you still will get a lot of competitive games. Palmeiras versus FC Porto, for example. Palmeiras are more than capable of beating FC Porto. They are not a poor side. PSG Atletico Madrid, yes, we see that in the Champions League. Al Ahly versus Inter Miami will be a competitive game. There are games like that where, yes, like I said, we know that Auckland are probably the smallest club in the entire competition, but there'll be huge, huge competitive games. Botafogo won the Copa Libertadores, didn't they, not long ago? So they're not there to make up the numbers, and they're going to want to show that. If teams like, if the big boys want to just act like it doesn't matter, let these teams beat them then. Watch how much money they make and how much they're missing out on. It's it's really that simple. I think a lot of these teams will give you a game. Yeah, you might lose. Some of them might lose heavily, but they'll give you a game because for them, the money's life changing, and also, when else are they going to get a chance to play them?
Yeah, I think as well. Just one final point before we move on to our predictions. Even if you look down at the breakdown of the money, because like for example, the runner-up gets 30 mil as opposed to the winner getting 40. So weirdly, obviously, once you're there, obviously you're going to want to win, right? But from a financial element, there's not that much of a jump up from like the semis to being the winners. So even if you're the runner-up, you're basically going to get, if my maths is right, you could still end up with around $100 million, um, based on how many games you win. But if you go all the way and then still lose, even to not win the tournament, it is such a financial implication and such an injection that these clubs are going to be fighting for their lives, I think. And the owners will be telling them to fight for their lives as well. So yeah, I do genuinely think it's going to be really interesting. Look, we promised our predictions for winners and our dark horses, so let's kick things off. Um, Reese, we'll bounce back to you for your dark horse pick.
Ooh. My dark horse pick is, despite them losing arguably their best player to Real Madrid recently, I'm going to go with River Plate as my dark horse. They're a good side, very good side. Um, they're not they're not a bad side, that's for sure. They can compete with anybody on their day. They'll be my pick, I think. However, I do think teams like Borussia Dortmund deserve a shout because of how well they've improved and how much they'll take this seriously. Or maybe even Palmeiras. I know I'm giving loads of options here, but I'll stick with River
Pick
Plate.
one, pick one.
River Plate. Yeah, River Plate.
Well, I might as well jump in then because annoyingly they were my dark horse pick as well. There is a few points though that you didn't mention, right? So let me just make sure I've got this right. Unbeaten in their last 16 games, only lost one game all season. Experience in their squad because they've got, if I'm not mistaken, World Cup winners, Copa America winners, and then when you actually look at their group, they're obviously in the group with Inter Milan. But if you look at the other teams, I mean, Red Diamonds and Monterrey. So you'd be pretty confident they're going to get through. Inter, obviously new manager, bad end to the season. I think you could make an argument they could also win their group, which would be a shock. And then if you then look beyond that, if I'm not mistaken, I think their worst case outcome for the round of 16 would be Dortmund, who are beatable. So then you're looking at that going, bloody hell, they could be in the, they suddenly could then be against a really big team. So yeah, I think River Plate could surprise a few people.
Well, I'm
Jamie.
glad. I'm glad it's not 3 for 3 and we're all picking the same one. That'd be a bit boring. I've gone with Flamengo. I quite like. I quite think I'd enjoy looking at the Brazilian teams. To be honest, they do come sort of. They have some sort of special players in their sort of ranks. All of them in the competition. To be honest, but these are the ones I think have the best chance of getting out of the group stage. They're in Chelsea's group in Group D. Now that's obviously hard to go and beat Chelsea, but a Robert Sanchez mistake, and they could definitely get a draw or win in there. And I think the other two games in your group against what is it? So El Tunis and what is it? Sports. Sorry, I can't find the
LAFC, I believe.
Or was it? Oh, sorry, it's changed. I've looked at the wrong, the old team that was in your group that got cancelled out of
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah.
But even them, yeah. So then it's not like it's not, it's not a massive team that you expect to do. So that I think that gets them through the group. And look, if they win it, I think that puts them in a very nice spot where they'll be playing Benfica or Boca Juniors. If they do go and sort of come second to Chelsea, which is probably the most likely, they do play Bayern Munich, which is the problem. But I think they'll be very good in the tournament, sort of just on the merit. To be honest, these dark horses, I think all three of us can probably agree. We probably don't expect any of them to win it all, but to sort of perform pretty well. And Flamengo, they're currently top of the league, only 11 games in, but they've got a game in hand over teams, and they've scored 24, conceded 4. It's quite a good start for them, so they're coming into it with a little bit of form at least.
Most
Cool.
supported, most supported club in Brazil, Flamengo. So they've
There
got
you
a
go.
lot.
We'll come back round to you then, Reese, for your winner prediction.
I'll go with PSG. I think Man City will be there and thereabouts, but I'm going to go with PSG just because I think the momentum behind them from the Champions League we might see them through, and you can tell that they're there to play, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it looks like we're just agreeing, Reese, on this. I've gone PSG as well. Yeah, very, very, very similar reasons to be honest. Momentum. It's not been long since Champions League win. Obviously the same manager in place. There's not been many changes to the squad. And if you look at the other teams, Chelsea signed a couple of players. City signed a lot of new players. They're gonna wanna. Pep's gonna want to get a few of those in. So you've got potential chemistry issues. They've got to get used to playing to each other. Madrid obviously got. I think it's only Trent. There's a couple of other signings in there, but Madrid, yes, they're probably still the favourites. I've not looked at the odds, but at the end of the day, they've not been great this season. So why 2 weeks later are they suddenly just going to be unbelievable again? Like it just doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, PSG for me.
Yeah, with the odds you were saying there, Jordan, Real Madrid are favourites, and then joint second is City and PSG.
Okay.
I've seen the top three for it. Mine, I'd like to say City, but because we're like, I think I agree with your points where we've brought in players, we don't know how they're going to perform. They could all come in, switch it on, and actually go and win the tournament. That'd be amazing. I'd love that, obviously. But looking at the sort of side of the draw, if City win their group, their toughest game would be Bayern Munich before the final.
Oh,
So
that's why. I was about to say I don't think you warrant being joint favourites with PSG, but that makes sense if you've got an easy run.
so the way the side of the draw is, if we top the group, it's sort of like it looks like it's going to be Bayern Munich, and then the sort of not your PSG or Real Madrid, because I think on the other side of the draw it would be PSG who likely come top, Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, and Chelsea.
Okay,
So it would
that's it.
be kind of a harder. I'd say that's a harder side of the draw, whereas City would have possibly Porto, Bayern Munich, Inter Milan as the other three. So I think that's where the sort of odds would probably go with that. So for that reason, I'm actually going to go with a Bayern Munich. I think they're gonna win the tournament. I think they've got quite a nice group to get through, and then sort of saying like on the better side of the draw. Obviously, no side is going to be easy. Better side of the draw, I think City. It's just we'd be favouring this if it was our team from 2 years ago. Like I'd be saying we should be favourites for that, but we're not that side. We've shown it this season. We're not that side, so that's where I'm going with. I'll go with Bayern Munich.
Well, Bayern Munich's base camp is Walt Disney World, isn't it, in Florida? So if you can get them off the rides,
That might be their problem.
they
That might
might
put
have
City in the final then.
too much fun. Yeah, they might have too much fun there. So hopefully they don't get too distracted by all the fun rides.
All right, there you have it. That is another episode wrapped up. As always, we want to hear from you. Make sure you put your winners and dark horse predictions in the comments. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.